Right now in football, there appears to be something that we could only really describe as a crowd emergency epidemic. That in the last 12 months, there has appeared to be much more fan emergencies in the stadium or even involving some football players in the past 12 months. During the Manchester derby yesterday in the 35th minute, the game was paused as there was a medical emergency in the crowd. And this is a very common trend this year. For example, the biggest one you may know is in Newcastle, that early in the year there was a Newcastle fan that also collapsed in the stands. Alongside that, one of the worst ones was at Fulham, for the Fulham versus Blackpool game in the first half, a fan collapsed and sadly he did lose his life. And it's not only the fans, also the players have also had issues in the last 12 months. The most well known is Christian Eriksen, of course, at the Euro finals, that he collapsed during the game. Also, Sergio Aguero came out and had to retire a bit earlier than expected as he also had heart problems. And even in the last couple of months, there's been some other incidents of the likes of John Fleck at Sheffield United had to be taken to hospital after collapsing on the pitch. Adama Traore, no, not that Adama Traore, the sheriff Adama Traore, that he was also found clutching his chest in the Champions League. Wigan's Charlie Wyke was taken to hospital during training because he also collapsed during his training session. The reason why I'm doing this video is that there's been more and more people coming out in the last couple of weeks, and there's been a lot of speak about many different types of theories, some being more of the conspiracy type, and I just wanted to put this information out there so that you guys can see the information and can kind of make your own judgment. So let's just go into the logical reasons of why this is the case, and I'll go into more statistical evidence as well later on. This isn't just all just off my mind. One of the main theories is about player welfare, and of course the likes of Jurgen Klopp has been the main advocate for the 5-sub rule, and in that he has spoke about the importance of player welfare, and that he's stated that they play too many games. He's not said that it will lead to players collapsing on pitch, but in terms of player welfare, could he have a point? Are players playing too much? Is it only inevitable that if you play at a top level so often that you will end up coming to consistent health problems? If it's with your heart, if it's with your brain. Of course, one of the main campaigns that we've seen in football in the last few years is dementia, and that is playing football giving you a much more increased chance of developing dementia if you're a footballer that heads the ball quite often. But it is important to say that this is not the only time in history that players or fans have collapsed at a football match. Of course, one of the most famous examples is Fabrice Miranda, who collapsed on the pitch for Bolton Wanderers, and a lot of people thought that was it. Thankfully, miraculously, he fought back and he still lives to this day. And that is amazing. So it's important to get out there that this isn't the only time in history that footballers have collapsed on the pitch. Let's talk about fans then. How many times has a game been paused because a fan had a medical emergency in the last 12 months? It feels like it's a lot more. I believe Watford has had 2, maybe 3. I want to say at least 2 in the last couple of months alone. In fact, I've never said this on my YouTube, but I collapsed at the Newcastle versus Burnley game. I said it on my Twitter, but I didn't say it in the video. I collapsed in the first half, just before we conceded our first goal, or only goal in that game. It ended 1-0. And I didn't collapse because I had a heart problem. I collapsed because I had food poisoning. I had some chicken from a place called Chickalicious in Newcastle. It was across Wetherspoons. I thought it was fine. It was just, I bought some normal like chicken strips, and then within like half an hour, 45 minutes, it just did not agree with me, and then I just completely just collapsed. I was out for about 30 seconds, I've been told. From what I've been told, I was. And then as soon as I woke up, I threw it all up, and then I was fine. I was probably down and I had medical people around me for about a minute or two, and maybe if I was lower down on the pitch in Newcastle, then maybe the game could have been paused for a second. I don't know, because it's kind of hard to tell from all the way up top of the gods, in the way end of Newcastle. But like I collapsed, but that's not because I had a heart problem, that's because I had food poisoning. Now the reason why I'm being careful is that a lot of people are pointing at the reason why there's been a lot more is because of the vaccine. The COVID-19 vaccine has been a lot of debate in the last few months. I must say that I've been vaccinated. I got my card here, and would I have been vaccinated if I didn't have to go back and forth from England to Poland so often? Then I probably wouldn't, because I know that of my age group, I trust my body personally. But if I were older, I would completely understand, and I would recommend to get the vaccine, because of course it is much more effective to older people. That's just my own personal opinion on it. I'm not saying don't get it or do get it. It's just, that's just my own thought. If I didn't have to get it, then I probably wouldn't get it. But if I were older, I probably would. That's just where I stand with it, really. Do whatever you want to do. A lot of people really want to point at the vaccine for the main cause of this. I found some information here based on studies in the past couple of years that leads to fan emergencies in crowds and in stadiums, and I think it's important to get this information here because I think a lot of people are still quite concerned about what's going on. So there's a study here in German football back in 2011, of course 10 years ago, but it gives you an example of how often is there a fan emergency at a game. This was conducted by surveying 15 different stadiums, and the conclusion of this study was that there was one cardiac arrest per 400,000 fans. Typically there's 0.2 per 100,000 people. And when you compare that to Premier League, it's about 400,000 people per weekend in Premier League at a football match, around on an average. Based on just that one study, typically we should expect one cardiac arrest at least once every weekend based on that study in terms of the laws of percentages. Another study here by a woman called Alison Leary undertook a study of crowd medical provisions at Millwall over a 14-year period. There was a graph of how many and how often was there a medical emergency, and in that there was a total of 72 incidents over a 13-year period that she recorded spectators being transferred to the hospital. So they did the maths, and on average Millwall had, let's say, 250,000 fans every year going in and through the den, right? So across 11 for 13 years, that is 3.2 million fans, and then you divide it by 72, and that means 45,000. That means that there's one medical emergency across 45,000 fans across a 13-year period. Also, I think it's important that football fans, not all, but let's say 15-20%, let's say, may have had a drink before going to the game. Let's just say 10. I think it's probably more than 10, but let's just say it's 10 as just a normal figure, right? 10% of fans has most likely had a drink for the game, okay? Drinking increases the chance of there being some sort of medical complication. That's just a fact of life here. There has been a lot more awareness and a lot more publication of the fact that so many people have collapsed. There's been times that people probably have collapsed at a game and the game doesn't get paused for it, and that is a very common thing, that a fan could collapse, like what I did, for example, and then the game's not paused for that. You only really hear if a fan has collapsed unless if the game has been paused, unless if you're at the game yourself or around the area, unless if you're around the area of when the person's collapsed, you may not even have an idea that it's even happened before. So I think it's fair to say that even though it feels like there's a lot more going on, I think just to kind of point to the vaccine, I think is lazy, in my opinion. And like, I'm not even like a vaccine lover. I just do whatever you want to do. Like, it doesn't really matter to me what you do with your own body, really. And I must say, I'm not saying that it could not be involved, because I don't know, but neither do you really know either. It's just kind of speculation at this stage. I'm interested in hearing your guys' thoughts on what you think is happening right now. There's definitely what appears to be a lot more going on, and the most important thing is that because there's so much attention on, fans collapsing at games, that means there's a lot more medical staff that's there ready to perform any sort of medical emergency when it happens, and that is a good thing. So I thought that I'll put this information out there, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And thank you guys for watching, and my name is Vizeh. See you next time.